So in a world where uncertainty seems to lurk around every single corner, there's a stark truth that we have to admit, and that's that nobody is coming to save you. Now, help may eventually come, and it probably will in some way, shape, or form. But until that help arrives, you're going to be on your own. You have to sustain yourself. And self-reliance is going to be an absolute necessity. As we've seen the last few weeks with, Hurricane Helene and the one that hit Florida and any number of other disasters. Look at Maui. Look at the dozens of tornadoes. All of these things are absolute prime examples of why you need to consider self-reliance as a priority for you and your family. Being solely reliant on outside help is a serious, serious gamble, especially during any kind of emergency when resources and just people available to come help are thin. So today, let's go ahead and break down some of the things that you need to be focusing on to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. And if you are stranded somewhere, if things take a downturn, it could be anything, natural disaster, civil unrest, even on up to the big things, such as the fall of an empire or economic collapse, invasion. It doesn't matter what it is. There's going to be a few certain things that are going to be a common denominator across all of them. Food and water, backup energy supply, sanitation, and communication with the outside world. These are things that are going to be imperative, so let's break each and every one of them down. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button, and we'll take a deep dive into this, and y'all be sure and stick around to the end of the video for the item of the day. So food storage. The federal government, all of these official agencies say that you need to have 3 days worth of food and water on hand. And I'm here to tell you, that's just not enough for something that's a big deal and takes out the logistics systems where the stores don't get resupplied for weeks. We've even seen this recently within the past 5 years or so when there just wasn't any food on the shelf because the logistics system fell apart. We see it during blizzards. Remember whenever there was a gas shortage from a pipeline that got shut down by hackers? So what I would shoot for here is to store up 3 to 6 months of food. This is your beginning point. Start with a week, go to 3 weeks, take it to a month, and then 3 to 6 months. The easiest way I've found to do this is come up with 7 meals. This is a plan that I kind of stole, like all the way stole from the Bear Independent YouTube channel. 7 meals that are relatively easy to make, that have a shelf life. The ingredients have a shelf life of a year or longer. An example of this would be canned chicken chili, macaroni and cheese, canned chicken spaghetti. These things like this we can buy in bulk as we can and store those on the shelf for a year or longer. We rotate in and out. If you go to Sam's Club and they've got pasta on sale, go and pick up a 12-pack of that, a 12-pack of spaghetti sauce, and a 12-pack of canned chicken. We now have Monday taken care of for the next 12 weeks. You can go on up to a full year with this. You understand the point, so let's move on from there. It's important, if you have the ability, to also be growing some of your own food in the ground, in the form of a garden, as well as food on the hoof, such as chickens, rabbits, etc. I just did another video a couple days ago that I'll link to that talks about 10 foods to store that have a 20-year or longer shelf life. And believe it or not, they're actually dirt cheap. Along with the food, you need to think about how you're going to cook this. As far as water goes, general rule of thumb has always been a gallon of water per person per day. And that works as an absolute minimum if you're not sweating, if you're not working, if you're doing nothing other than sitting in the shade in a climate-controlled environment waiting on somebody to come rescue you before you finish the dying process, a gallon of water per person per day is sufficient. However, the reality is you're going to need more like 3 to 5 gallons of water per person per day. All that freeze-dried food, all the pasta, everything like that, it all takes water to be able to prepare and cook. We need to think about sanitation, some way to wash our hands. Water's important, and you probably need more of it than you thought you did. Now, with water being so heavy, bulky, and somewhat difficult to store a massive amount, we need to think of resupply and treatment, whether that be, rainwater harvesting or a well or a natural source of water. All of those are options. Just keep in mind, if we look at North Carolina, there was a PVC plant that flooded out and contaminated the river that most people would have relied on for their resupply. Another thing that happened was septic systems got flooded and contaminated everybody's well. Rainwater catchment off your roof, as long as you have a good first flush system to flush all that dirt and anything else that you just don't need to be ingesting in before it goes into your storage, is probably the best bet. Now then, we have the water, we need to treat it. By far, in my opinion, the best way to treat water is with a Berkey filter. Alexa Pure makes one too. I think either one of them would suit you just fine. I'll try to put some links to that in my Amazon links in the description in the comments. As well as, bleach. Now, bleach does have a pretty short shelf life. So you look into things like sodium hypochlorite, which is just a powdered form of bleach, like shock. So that's one way to disinfect the water, as well as, disinfecting surfaces, after we've, been living in it. We need to keep things clean. And as a last resort, pre-filter and boil your water. This uses a ton of energy. It's my least favorite method. There's a whole bunch of other things, iodine and life straws. And life straws are good, but I don't like having my face this far away from a potentially contaminated water source. So I generally just consider that as an absolute emergency system. Now let's move on to backup forms of energy. And I'm not just talking about electricity here, although that's important and it's a big part of it. And we'll start with that. But we also need to consider, how are we going to cook? Right now, it's October. It's starting to get cold at night. How are we going to stay warm? How are we going to charge our devices? All of these things need to be considered. So, as far as backup energy for like power, obviously a fuel-based generator is the fastest, easiest, and most efficient and effective way to do this. What I prefer is a dual fuel powered generator that runs off of propane and gasoline. Store up enough gasoline to get you through. Buy 12 5-gallon cans of gasoline. That gives you 60 gallons of fuel, and that'll run a generator for a long time, especially if you're using it conservatively, because we don't know when this emergency is going to end. I have another video that I'll link above that talks about, fuel storage if you want to go that route. Natural gas generators are great, your Generacs and things like that. But keep in mind, if it's a disaster, there's a pretty good chance that stuff is falling. One tree, one house, one car, anything falls and crushes a single gas meter. For the safety of the public, the gas company and fire department are going to shut off the gas for that entire neighborhood, because we can't have natural gas spraying out of the ground while people are trying not to die. Once that happens, your natural gas generator is absolutely useless. I think it's a great choice, but not the first choice. It's a second choice. You need to have a generator that you can possess your own fuel supply for first. Solar generators. I hate calling these solar generators because they don't generate anything. They're battery banks, nothing more. That's it. You can hook a solar panel up to them, or you can plug them into the wall to allow them to charge off of AC, but they're not generators. You have to supply the power to them and they will store that power. These are great for maintaining devices, or if you have something in the house and the power goes out and you just need to plug a few things in while you take the time to go outside and hook up your fuel powered generator, or wait on your backup generator to, automatically kick on. Things like that. That's where I want you to look at the solar generators. That's where they come in. As far as fuel for, energy for cooking, you can go a whole bunch of different ways on this. If you have a propane stove, well, as long as you got propane in your tank, it's not going to affect you that much as long as the tank didn't get compromised. Aside from that, we look into, camp stoves and digging a hole in the ground and cooking with a cast iron Dutch oven. By the way, check out Cowboy Kent Rollins if you want to learn some really, really cool ways to do that. Cast iron skillets over a fire. Been doing it. People have been doing it for eons, and that's absolutely still viable. But don't forget, if you have a charcoal or propane grill, by all means, fire that booger up and get to town with it. Now, backup heat. Obviously, there's the things like fireplaces and wood stoves, but what if we need to heat just a small space? Or what if you don't have that? My favorite option for this is the Mr. Heater, the Buddy heaters, the Big Buddy, the Little Buddy, that series of heaters. I have both the Buddy and the Big Buddy heater. They can run off of, a big tank with an adapter hose, as well as the little, 1 pound camp style propane tanks. That's an excellent choice. And once you buy into that ecosystem of the camp fuel propane tanks, you get all sorts of options like lights. Propane light will put off a lot of heat. Don't make any mistake about that. So that's probably my favorite form of alternative heat. The fireplace in the living room, which is at that end of the house, doesn't do that great of a job of heating way back here at the back of the house. So that's where that, Buddy style heater comes in. And they actually do put out quite a bit of heat for what they are, and surprisingly efficient as well. And if we're going to talk about energy sources, backup power, we need to think about lights. I don't know if you can see, but I've got all kinds of lights. I make videos on YouTube, so I've got an abundance of lights, but having some sort of rechargeable and battery powered lights, a combination of both of those. Headlamps, extremely important. Once you start using a headlamp, you absolutely despise whenever you have to get out a flashlight. The flashlight is what you carry because it's convenient. The headlight is what you carry because you actually want to enjoy using, have the use of the light go seamlessly. You just get stuff done. Now let's move on to emergency communications. Communications is more than just talking back and forth to other people. Communications is also gathering information. So having battery powered radios, like AM, FM style radios, a police scanner, that would be considered communication as well. A couple of Baofeng radios. He doesn't have any idea who I am, but Evan at Radio Made Easy offers a really good course and kit for that. Ham radio. It's a little bit of a dive to get into, but you learn a lot if you go through that licensing process. If you do go the Baofeng route, be sure that you have the radio programmed before you need it. That's extremely important. And you can program in the frequencies that talk to, the little bubble pack, GMRS, FRS, Walmart radios as well. And those are an option that should not be overlooked either. CB radio, the range on those kind of sucks and it's a little outdated, but I think it's still viable. And if you can pick one up cheap, I think you ought to have a couple of those sitting around. Internet. Internet is our primary form of communication now. And being able to have internet is definitely a plus. And Starlink recently has shown to be an absolute game changer for emergency communications. Grindstone Ministries deployed in Tennessee to help with the relief from Hurricane Helene. Most of those places aren't accessible by road. They actually set up what they called the Ho Chi Musk Trail, which is doing nothing but delivering Starlink systems that were donated so that people can have communication to the outside world. Social media, all of that stuff, an excellent way to get communication out as well as bring in communication. If you are stuck in a situation where phone service absolutely sucks and you're not sure if you're going to be able to charge your phone again, change your voicemail. This is such and such time and date. I am okay. Please do not leave a message as I will not check it. Or if something changes, this is Matt, the date is this, the time is this. I am in need of this. My location is this. You may not be able to answer the phone, but people who call will be able to leave a voicemail. Remind them not to leave, or it'll be sent to voicemail. Remind them not to leave a voicemail, because then you run the risk of the mailbox filling up and people not being able to get that message delivered. It'll just say the voicemail is full. One of the most valuable assets is the communication that you can start today. Find out your neighbors' names. Invite them over for a cookout. Interact with them in some way, shape, or form. Because with all of this stuff with the Hurricane Helene and the damage in North Carolina and Tennessee has shown, it is NGOs, non-government organizations, and private citizens that are saving each other's lives by the hundreds every single day. You need to establish rapport with the people who are close to you, both, in your life and, physically located close to you, your neighbors. Be able to start that conversation with them now. You don't have to mention anything about the prepping or survival and scare them off if you don't want to, but just at least get on a first name basis with them. That way, if something does happen, even if you don't suspect that they're into preparedness, if they haven't woke up yet for some reason, you'll be able to communicate with them and check on each other after something happens. So statistically, if anything bad happens, sanitation is going to be the thing that gets you. As long as you made it through the initial event, which affects a relatively small amount of people as compared to the large amount of people that suffer problems with sanitation issues. Sanitation is what's going to get you, and you have to be able to make sure you're able to handle that. Fingers, flies, and feces. These are the things we need to worry about. I already kind of discussed, bleach water for sanitation. Also hand sanitizer, so we're not blowing through our, stored water supplies. Lysol spray, disinfecting wipes. Be sure that you have some way to sanitize the area that you're living in. Another thing we need to think about is waste. Obviously trash and things like that, but human waste. Where are you going to poop? And how are you going to keep that poop from becoming part of your life when you don't want it to be part of your life? There's a lot of people that have septic systems. I'm on a septic system. If something floods, is that going to back up your septic system into your house? It's something you need to think about now rather than later. Ask any plumber and they'll tell you human waste is a more common issue than what you think. So you guys keep in mind that self-reliance isn't non-negotiable. It's something that you do not have a choice in. You have to start building your self-reliance today. And it's easy to take that first step. If you have an empty bottle of water, go fill it up with water. You're one bottle of water better than you were 10 minutes ago. If something happens, emergency services will be overwhelmed, if not completely inoperable because their radio towers were completely smashed or something like that. Somebody will probably come along to help you eventually if they know you're there. But your self-reliance is going to ensure that you make it to that point. And here's the thing. If you yourself have established self-reliance, then you're capable of helping other people, which is important. People talk about how they're not going to help anybody. Well, if that's the case, you're a dick. Straight up. Sorry for my language, but you're an asshole. So the faster you accept the fact that nobody is coming to save you, at least for a period of time, the better off you'll be. So anyway, I thank you guys for watching. I'll have some links below to Amazon, and check out the item of the day coming up right after this. Those Amazon links, they provide us like a 1% commission, and it doesn't cost you a single dime extra. So if you're going to buy something anyway, please click one of my Amazon links to take you to Amazon. I'll get credit whether you purchase the item I listed or not. And to you beautiful, beautiful bastards that have actually been clicking on those links and buying me a cup of coffee every few days, man, that's amazing that you actually are going to share some of your hard-earned fiat dollars with me. So I really do thank you for that. So today's item of the day really has nothing to do with preparedness, but it's an awesome product that I use every single day, and that's the jlab AirPop Go or something like that, wireless earbuds. Let's flip this camera around and talk about them. Okay, back to the top of the wife's car again. So these little earbuds right here, I use these at work every single day, and they do fit inside EarPro. Now, if you're anything like me, you're constantly pressed for time. There's several podcasts that I like to keep up with. That's where I get my news, because old media is dead, and the alternative media, such as podcasts, TikTok, YouTube, and other things like that, are where you get actual information. I can get a full 8 hours out of these. I generally just wear one of them at a time. They do offer Bluetooth calling, but the quality isn't that great. But these things are like 30 bucks. Everybody wants the Apple AirPods and the Beats or the Raycons. You can buy like 3 of these for the price of the cheapest one offered by any of those other companies I mentioned. So I'll post up a link with these in the description. They really are pretty cool. My son has had a couple pairs. I think one of his got stolen, the other he lost somewhere. But yeah, I really don't have any intention on buying anything other than these jlabs in the future.